Guten Tag, it's me, Anthony. I was going to do a rant today on something that I was coming home after doing some errands, and I realized that I was the object or subject of a probably of a firing at one point at one of my best employers, which was Amaron. People hire people for the greatest return and for the least amount of investment. I'm reading something because I had to write it down because it's such a big rant. And I wanted to make sure I got everything into this. And this was my best job with that Amaron Pipe and Concrete. I was a non destructive testing technician, weld inspector, and I tried getting the job 3 times through the NDT um, in supervisor. I guess his name was Ian Radcliffe. I tried 3 times to get the job, but he kept on ignoring my calls or just avoiding me. Period. And it was it was intentional because he wanted to hire somebody that he was a teacher, a part-time teacher, vocational teacher at Don Bosco in NDT Los Angeles. They used to teach non-destructive testing at Don Bosco High School, and it was called chapter of NDT Los Angeles. And he wanted to get one of his students into this position, but unfortunately I had called the quality manager about the position, and I kept harping about it, and until finally I got it. I got the job, and Baki. Not that it matters, but it might matter a little bit. He was of Lebanese ethnicity, so I don't know if he thought I was, from the Middle East or not. I don't know, but it could matter, couldn't matter, But the guy who wouldn't give me the interview, he was definitely of British descent. So, I don't know if that matters. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. But anyway, um, I was hired by the quality inspector, Mr. Kamal Baki, like I said. And uh, I later came to know, like I said, about they didn't want to hire me because he wanted to hire another person who was learning at his school. Okay, but he wanted to, but with persistence, like I said, I got the job. While under the employment of Amaron, I had to deal with many third party inspectors, and one of them was a Mexicano. Like I said, like I don't really know if it matters, but I kind of think it does. His name was Umberto, Humberto, Umberto. Umberto didn't like me. Mm, I didn't care for him either, but that's besides the point. But at Amaron, when you were a third party inspector, you could decide who you want inspecting your projects. So Umberto wanted to get rid of me, but my plant manager, Bruce Akana, whose ethnicity was Hawaiian. I don't know if it matters, but I'm throwing it in there anyway. And ever since then, I've loved Hawaiian culture. And besides, the HR lady was Hawaiian too, among with some of the assistants. And all of a sudden, I became I was Hawaiian too now. Okay, okay. Before I got hired on Kamal Baki, I was Lebanese. Hey, like I don't know what they say, Allah Akbar or Allah Akbar or whatever. But anyway, I switch. You got to do what you got to do in this world to get the job. That's what I tell my kids. You get the job. You do what you got to do to get the job. Once you got the job, you fake it till you make it. I ended up working at that job for 7 years until it closed. Well, until I left, but it eventually closed. But I'll get to that point. Okay, because I didn't have a lot of experience in mechanical things like mechanical production of welds. That's why Umberto wanted to get rid of me. But most of my experience was from the electronic industry when I worked at General Dynamics. That's how I learned how to use all the equipment that they were using. They were using real time images, and I used the real time imager to look at some welds and some mostly electronic stuff. That was my in. It was a little teeny tiny box, with little toggle switches going beep 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 beep. Oh, I see it. Little tiny electronics compared to this big giant um X-ray machine that is gonna X-ray 15-foot diameter pipe that's about 20 foot long. Okay, bigger than a car. Okay, big. It could swallow a truck can like an F10, F50, F150 Ford could go through one of those pipes. Okay, that's how big they were compared to what I was learning when learning to go from this to that. So I could see where he's coming from. But anyway, Bruce said, hell no, nobody's going to tell me who I can hire and who I have to fire. So good for that. But anyway, um, okay, so after about 3 years, the contract started to slow down and the production was canceled for the Mojave Water Transmission Project. That's what it was called. They were going to run a water pipe through the mountains of the Mojave Desert. But there was like it's an Indian reservation, and some paperwork came up or something, and the project was canceled. So they moved me into different fields, but because I was an NDT technician, a weld inspector, and now the job was gone supposedly for a while. It might pick up again, but they wanted me to keep doing inspection of NDT and weld inspection, but they wanted to pay me less, okay? Because I wasn't a full-time inspector. And that wasn't going to cut it because I was already salary. So they were going to take me from my salary position and put me to the hourly position again. I said, no way, Joe, no way. Well, they didn't want to fire me at that time, or they didn't want to let me go for some reason or anything. I don't know what the deal was at that time. So they transferred me to the Fontana plant where they had more pipe construction, but it was smaller diameter. So I continued my NDT and my same pay scale and my same salary, and I worked there for a while until I had a falling out with the crew and the QC lead at that time. I don't even remember his name. Big old fat burly guy. Okay, I'm Pat, I'm burly. But this guy would go to McDonald's. He'd have two offices. One across the street or across the road, and one in the main office for the NDT office. NDT office, and then you have like a work office. That guy would buy like two McDonald's meals. He would have one in the regular office, and then when it's time to go transfer across the street for the production office, he would have another one there. So we'd have two breakfasts. Okay, and it smelled good and it looked good. Okay, I mean we're talking egg McMuffin. We're talking about the little potato, and we're talking about the coffee, the whole shebang. Okay, one here in this breakfast, and then within about an hour or 2 or 3 hours later, you go across the street. Anyway, so I had a falling out with them, and the falling out, guess what it was? Because I didn't refill the coffee maker or something. I didn't refill coffee. Okay, all right. You should have told me. All right. Well, anyway, it is what it is. I didn't like him anyway, and they didn't like me. So good for that. So anyway, so I had a falling out. They brought me back to Eddie Wanda on Arrow Highway, Amaron, pipe transmission, the place I started at, and they kept me working there for a while. And like I said, I was still making money, my NDT position, but now again, I wasn't inspecting pipe. I wasn't doing the job specifically that they hired me. I was doing inspection work, but at a lower grade, and they wanted to pay me a lower level. So anyway, they had a company, another third party inspectors that would come, and they were looking at their projects There's always third party companies in there all the time, in and out, in and out. It's a big corporation. It's a big construction site where they manufacture pipes. Well, this one particular third party inspection, it was called Walls Inspection. WALLS. It was a family owned, operated construction company, inspection company. It was a father and son, and the father was a really nice guy. The son was really nice. I'd go help them concurrently doing my own inspection, and I was told to also help them when they needed it. So I'm concurrently helping them and doing my own stuff. And I was working like, before the project finished, I was doing like 18 hours. My minimum would be 15-hour days. That was minimum. I mean, I'd go in at 6 in the morning, I'd get out at 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes I do 18, 19 hours. I think one time I did 20 hours straight. Forget the breaks, forget the lunch. You eat and you break and you piss when you have time. That's the way it was, and that's the way it is. You're paying big bucks, and there's such thing as break. I'm going on a break time. I'm going on a 10. I'm going on a 10. Yeah, you're going on a 10, you're going on a 15 when you have the time, And I'll never forget, I'm deaf now, by the way, because of the constant pounding of rings and bells that I had to loosen up to attach to pipes. The bells and rings, which would be spigots, bells and spigots. They'd come attached one to the other. For that particular bell and spigot had to go together. So I had to number them, and I had to pull them apart. And the only way you're going to pull them apart was you're going to hammer them with, you had to hit them with a hammer because they'd have to come out loose. They do have to loosen them up. You couldn't get a crowbar because then you're going to bend the spigot or the bell, one or the other. So it was constantly boom, boom, boom. Man, I remember days and days and weeks of doing that stuff. Boom.